We got a little automated voice then, recording in progress. Okay, good to know, good to know. Welcome to the Sasuga podcast, and I'm delighted to introduce our special guest, Violet. So Violet, please tell us who you are and what you do.
Hi, thanks for inviting me on the show. I live in Kochi Prefecture in the mountains called town of Otoyo. I moved here in August 2020 last year. Until then, I've got about 15 years, give or take, of finance background, covering Japanese equities. So I've done everything from sales, institutional sales, to asset management, to working for a hedge fund, doing hedge fund research, to all sorts of different things. And I moved here last year. It actually had nothing to do with the coronavirus. I was working remotely. I set up my company VP Advisors in Tokyo in 2018. And the company was providing Japanese stock market research and company research to hedge funds overseas. And I was doing that remotely already. So it didn't really matter where I worked. And my husband was in Japan. He came to Japan with me for my work, so he wasn't working, he was looking after our 3 kids. And my mother's from Otoyo, so she was living over here, and she's a landowner, and she owns a bunch of land, properties, mountain land, which she was finding it difficult to manage herself. So I asked my husband if he would mind moving here with the kids and taking care of some of the fruit trees, yuzu trees, citrus, whatever. And he was kind enough to say yes. So he moved over here with the kids first, and I was going back and forth from Tokyo and Otoyo before the coronavirus hit. And then the coronavirus started to spread, and it just became more and more difficult to go back and forth. And at the same time, my contract with this hedge fund ended. So I thought, I could stay in Tokyo and look for another job, but I thought maybe this is an opportunity to just completely moved here. My family was already here. My husband and kids were already here, and they were liking living in the countryside. So I thought, why not just move here and make a living of it? And we gave ourselves a few years. If we don't like it, we can always move back. Our house in Tokyo is still there. So the first month, I guess it took me about a month to decide what I wanted to do. I actually explored the idea of whiskey.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I explored lots of different things. And then I settled on CrossFit because I've been doing CrossFit for the last 5 years, and I thought, I'm already an alcoholic, so if I make alcohol my job, then I'll be drinking all day every day, and I didn't want that. So I thought, I want to be healthy. My husband's healthy and he's very fit, so I thought having a CrossFit facility would be great in the mountains, so somewhere for the kids to work out, somewhere for us to work out, and also to try and promote a healthy living to people, not just to people here, but to across Japan. So that idea started last year when I moved here in August. And I still have my VP Advisors company. So I do 3 things for the company. 1 is private sector consulting, 2 is public sector consulting, and the 3rd part is the regional revitalization business, which is the CrossFit retreat. The CrossFit retreat idea is still, we are affiliated with CrossFit, so we can use the name CrossFit when we talk about it, but we still don't have a facility. I'm going to build that from the ground up. My mother has some land next to the river, and it's really scenic. And I have hired a architect to plan and design the area. So we're going to have a 200 square feet, probably going to be a Japan themed CrossFit box, and then we're going to have a small tiny house accommodation for 1 group to be able to stay in, and barbecue space, event space, fire pit, and all sorts. So architect is designing that for us, and that is going to start construction later this year, and it's going to be 6 months construction. Hopefully we can open by spring next year, 2022.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. In the meantime, we've already ordered our equipment from Rogue. It's arriving this week or next. So we're desperately trying to negotiate with the local town to get them to, give us, so we'd be able to use one of the Haiko Shisetsu, one of the abandoned schools. which is kind of proven difficult, but we're nearly there. We're trying to find a facility, temporary location, so we can start offering classes. We're getting a lot of media attention from local, NHK and local TV stations and newspapers. So we've got all this promotion going on and just nowhere to host the classes, which is a shame. So I'm trying to move fast. Sorry, it was a very, very long explanation of my background, but
no I want to just go to a few questions, especially for listeners, because I mean we've had a little chat before we started the recording as well, but just to clarify for listeners, you've talked about your husband and your mother and your 3 kids. So your husband is from
the US.
He's
Italian and American. He's mixed.
Okay.
So his dad's from Italy, his mom's African American. Okay. And I'm Japanese and British, so which makes our kids, they've got 4 nationalities, 3 passports.
Wow. Yeah. 3 passports. That's amazing. Okay. So your mum's Japanese from and then your dad
father is from Birmingham in England.
Right. And so we just found out before we started this recording that we went to the same university.
Yeah. What a small world.
Violet found this out. She's like, oh, you went to the same university.
Yeah.
So the regular Sasuga podcast listeners may also remember that Sarah Furuya, who was our guest a few episodes ago, she is also from Aston University in the UK. So Aston University in the UK is putting out some amazing graduates.
We need to get commission if we send any students that way.
I reckon so. So let's I want to go to some of the other questions, the regular questions, but I just want to stick with this what you were talking about in terms of the CrossFit, because can you explain for listeners who don't know what CrossFit is, what that actually is?
Oh, there's a statement that I'm meant to say in CrossFit.com. CrossFit's going to be angry with me for not saying it, but it's basically a very effective way of exercising in 1 hour. So the guy that started it, Greg Grassman, in the US in 1995, he started this because he was a trainer for the local police force, I think. And he was, trying to create something that the police could, do in a very short amount of time. So it's a mixture of, weightlifting. It's a mixture of high intensity workouts. It's a mixture of gymnastics moves, and you have to do that all in one. So it's a class format. It's in Japanese. I've been promoting it as a semi-personal training, which is, I think, easier to understand because it's not one-on-one personal training. It's not a big group class setting. It's a small, more personalized group class setting where there's usually 1 or 2 coaches in a maybe 10, 15 people class. And they will, go around and teach you the different movements of gymnastics and weightlifting. And it's a very, I've found it a very effective way to work out, because since the age of 16, I've been going to the gym. But when I go to the gym, you sign a form, you become a member, and you go, and you're kind of left to your own devices. I might go to a few classes, but you're left to your own devices. I don't really know how to use the machines. I don't know how to use free weights. And I'm just working out parts of my body that I know I'm good at. So my legs will get strong, but my arms will just stay weak. So when I started CrossFit 5-6 years ago at the Nishiazabi CrossFit in Tokyo, I quickly found out that my arms were very weak. My legs were strong. I could do certain movements, but other movements I wasn't very good at. So CrossFit helps you work the whole body. So you become quite good at a lot of things. You don't become an expert in one thing. You become, so, when you look at Olympic sports and you look at long distance runners, you look at sprinters, you look at, another team sport person, like they have different body types because they're very specialized in those one things. When you look at a powerlifter, they might be very, very strong, but they won't be able to do cardio. When you look at a long distance runner, they're very skinny and they're very slim and they can run very, very long distances. But when it comes to lifting, they're not very good at lifting weights. What CrossFit does is it incorporates all of those movements and then puts it into one class. So you become relatively okay at everything. That's the idea.
Okay. And so you talked about the facility that you're going to be opening, and you talked about retreats.
Yep.
So are you imagining people who come to a retreat who do they need to have done CrossFit before, or they can be absolute beginners, or how are you imagining this?
They can be absolute beginners. We're going to have CrossFit classes, and we're also going to have introduction to CrossFit classes for the tourists that come through. And Otoyo has a big river running down called Yoshino River. It's one of the most famous rivers for whitewater rafting. So this town has a lot of outdoor activity, outdoor sports that people can do. So you can go hiking, you can go, cycling, you can go whitewater rafting, you can go stand-up paddleboarding. So if you come here on the weekend, those you can also work out. If you're somebody that works out on a daily basis, you don't want to go on holiday and not work out. So those are probably going to be our target audience, although everybody's welcome. And the property that I'm trying to use as a temporary location, I'm actually going to go and see them tomorrow, is a big town-owned park at the top of the mountain, and it's a campsite and a lodge, so people will be able to stay there and do barbecues. And this because it's atop of the mountain, there's a sea of clouds in the morning, which is absolutely amazing to see. And if we provide our CrossFit classes there, you can do CrossFit for an hour in the morning, and then you can come down the mountain and go whitewater rafting, go back up, enjoy the view, enjoy doing barbecues, and just have a really nice relaxing weekend or a week. So that's the type of retreat I'm imagining.
Oh wow, this sounds so fabulous. I'm looking forward to this opening and down there and visiting.
Yeah, next year.
Absolutely, that sounds wonderful. So let's go back into some of the regular questions that I ask on the Sasuga podcast, and the one that I usually start with is word of the year. So this has been a time of change for you, moving from your life in Tokyo, and then last year you moved to your new countryside life with a lot of changes there. Yeah. What's been your word of the year for this year?
It's difficult to choose one, but I would say network. Networking is the most important aspects of any business, but I think here more so. One, I'm new to this area, and two, countryside in Japan is just famous for it's who you know, it's not what you know. So networking has been very important for me this year.
So when you talk about networking, you're talking about the local networking, but also it's networking more broadly for people to know about what you're doing in that area. Is that right?
Yes, I think so. So networking to me would mean like communication, presenting my ideas, networking. So the first thing I did last year when I came here in August, I was so lucky that NHK asked me to do, they were doing a special on Otoyo, a 30-minute program for Journeys in Japan, which is an NHK World International show, promoting Japan, rural areas. And I was they just happened to come across, I just happened to come across them. They were looking for a local reporter. I'd never done it before. They asked me to do it. So I did it. And through that, I met a lot of people, and I was lucky enough to be able to create this like presentation afterwards, just for myself, on what this town needed to progress. And I took that presentation, and I just started pitching it to everybody that would listen to me. I went to the bank. I didn't want money. I just wanted to network. So I went to the bank, then I went to the town hall, and then I went to the prefecture. And then the bank, Kochi Bank, liked me so much, they brought a director down here to meet me. So I pitched that to him too. And it didn't, I wasn't trying to sell them anything. I just wanted people to hear my views on what this town needed to do to change. And then, somebody said, oh, have you met this professor from Kochi University? Because they're probably doing the same thing. So I went and met them. And now I know like 10 of those professors from Kochi University, because they're trying to do the same thing. Because this town went from, I don't know, like 20,000 people in the 70s. So now there's only 3,000 people. They call it a marginalized town in English. It's called a Genkai Shuraku. And this town is the first town in Japan to be named that name, Genkai Shuraku.
Really?
Yeah. the reason is because, people migrate into cities, they're losing all the talent, demographic shift, and more than half of the population is over 65. So it's a huge problem, not just for this town, but all the towns across Japan, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I started. That was my way of networking. And I don't know what I was trying to achieve. I just wanted people to hear my ideas. And then through that, I got my idea to do CrossFit. And that's how I was lucky enough to meet so many different people who have been helping me along the way. And I think it's very important in rural areas to know the key people. And, I went and presented this to the local chamber, who then introduced me to the local female politician, because I was trying to use the female angle. There's 2 female politicians. And the Aotearoa Chamber's chairwoman is a woman. Apparently she's the only woman who's a chair in all of Japan for these rural areas. I haven't fact checked, but that's what they said. So I think networking is very important. Knowing the right people, and through that, and if they really like your vision and your ideas, they would then introduce you to someone else who might be able to help. So that's been my word this year.
The program that you talked about, so I watched that.
Yeah, how did you?
It was great. And if you want, we can link to that in the show notes.
Yeah, I'm actually doing another one. I'm going to record another one next week. They came back to, I don't know if I can talk about this on this now, but I will be doing another one.
Okay.
Yeah.
and then we can also add that to the show note, to the links in the show notes when it's released. Oh, that's brilliant. So the thing that I was going to say with in that program, if I recall correctly, it talked about how you were introducing your ideas, and then it was also, if I recall correctly, there was like for people who are moving to that area.
Yeah.
So are you finding that there's now an increase in people moving into Otoyo?
I think there's been a gradual increase of people moving here because of the rafting. The rafting kind of took off around 20 years ago. I remember coming to visit this town, from a young age, and the last 40 years. And, there was no rafting companies. There was just the concept of rafting didn't exist in Japan. And some, Australians and Kiwis were coming here and they were like, oh, this is a great river. So they started camping out and then started giving tour guides. And that's how the rafting started. I think in the whole of Japan, it started like that. And so some Australian guide, Mark, he was in the show. He set up a rafting company, and I think it really spread. So now there's 5 or 6 rafting companies in this town alone, and lots more in the neighboring towns that by this river. So I think through the rafting community, there's been an inflow of a small inflow of people, not enough to offset the decline, but to me, I don't think bringing more people in is, sorry, I need to drink some water.
No worries.
Yeah, bringing people into these regional towns is one way of revitalizing the region, but I think what the town really needs is the experience that people in big cities have that these towns don't, and the connections that they can bring. Connections and ideas. So tourism alone isn't going to revitalize this region.
Right.
Inflow of people isn't going to revitalize this region. I think what it needs is big private investments coming in.
Right. So you're talking about then local people coming up with new sort of businesses, and then getting the cough away, no problem. You can.
It's not coronavirus, I swear.
So it's people bringing expertise and ideas to local people so that they can start to develop their own businesses. Is that more what you're talking about?
Yes to the first part. So one of the projects I'm doing with Kochi University is they've got this can't remember what they called it. They've got a group of people from big companies in cities to come here every year and discuss, and there'll be like one person each from different companies. Sorry, my throat. My youngest daughter gave me a cold, and
okay, all right, we'll just take a little break while Violet's having a drink of water.
My throat is sorry.
No worries.
So one of the projects I'm working with the university is they're bringing in Japanese people from cities, and we'll sit down and try and come up with different ideas how to revitalize this region. I'm thinking in a way like, for example, if a company, a startup or a big company like Rakuten, and they want to test a new technology in remote areas, I think they could set up a research and development center here, and that way, money injected into this town, and there'll be an inflow of people coming through those big companies, and through that, I think this town will be more money will be injected, more money will be going around in the economy. Because tourism alone and small businesses alone is not going to help, so it needs to come from those big companies. Can we have, Rakuten's doing self-driving or last 1 mile delivery. Can they do that testing here? Because we have so many people living in remote locations up the mountains, and the roads are very bad and you can't get there. So can they test it here? Can Toyota come and do self-driving technology here? Can sorry.
No worries.
So things like that, new technology, research development, VR technology, drones, I don't know, things that perhaps you couldn't do in a big city. And you could argue that yes, you can do that anywhere in Japan where it's remote, because Kochi and Otoyo is not the only place that has mountains. But this was the first town that became a marginalized town. So I think it's really important for big corporations to help out these small regions in bringing in their money over here, so kind of directing their money flow this way. I think otherwise Japan is going to collapse. When you see the way the town hall is operated, most of the people don't have education. They didn't go to university. Some of the over 50s perhaps didn't even go to high school, and those are the people making decisions. I'm not saying education is the only way out, but the level of knowledge and talent compared to big cities and these rural towns, so different, and such a big gap that these towns are getting left behind. It's not just about diversity or gender equality, because that's very behind as well, but I'm talking technology. I'm talking like the way things are done, and they don't even know how to keep statistical data on each of their departments. When I was creating my presentation last year for about this town, I wanted to know where their money was coming from, which industries were the top players. I wanted historical data, because that's my background. I collect data, I analyze it, and then I present the findings. That's what I tried to do with this town, but nobody could tell me where the data was. They're not collecting any data. That was just amazing to me. And I think if bigger companies could inject more money in areas like this, it would help turn around some of the rapid decline that these regions are facing. So that's the goal of my company. The fitness retreat is just I guess a hobby, and I'm gonna get my husband to run it, but my overall aim is to educate people in these regions and try and attract more investment.
Right. I love that. So let's just pause for Sasuga podcast listeners who have connections with any of those companies that Violet's just mentioned, or for any similar types of companies. Keep in mind this message, keep in mind this opportunity, because this could be really, really huge. So that's one thing I wanted to say. Then also going back to what you were saying about the people in the rural areas may not have those the skills that other people in the bigger cities have, not through any fault of their own, of course, but just because they haven't had the education opportunities. It's just not the thing, right? It reminds me of a few years ago. So I had an opportunity to give a presentation in a rural area, and what struck me is it's not just the skills, actually, it's the mindset as well. And I think this is something that, you know, you're keen on as well, is I really noticed there was this one lady in particular, Japanese lady, who is the sort of person that you can tell immediately when you meet them that she's very, very smart, really, really talented, like huge potential. And yet when I was talking with her about her future plans, she had just a very limited scope in her mind of what was possible. And that really struck me. So the whole mindset thing, because not having been exposed to the possibilities that are out there. So what are your thoughts on the mindset?
That's a really good way of, that's a very good observation. I do find it very difficult. It is very challenging to try and communicate with the local people here, the local town office, because I guess because they have a different mindset and they don't understand fully my vision, I do get a lot of pushback. And I just have to keep pushing and pushing, or try a different way. Because a lot of the times, like you said, it's not their fault. It's not that person's fault. It's just the way they've been raised, and it's the way they've been taught to communicate. So one of the examples is, you know, I want to utilize an old school arena. So last year when I started CrossFit idea, I didn't want to build a completely new building when there's, you know, 5 abandoned schools in this town alone, and it's just such a waste because they're just sitting there. It's not being used. So I thought, oh, why not use it? Because there's, you know, I looked into this. I think there's 2,000 unused schools in Japan, and only 25% are being used at the moment. But the abandoned schools, I mean, they're being reused. 25% being reused. So the central government's trying to push local governments to, you know, reutilize some of these abandoned schools, because these are unused assets, which is just doesn't make sense. So that was my original thought process. When I approached the town, there was a no. So I thought, oh, I'll just go above them and go to the prefecture. So I went to the prefecture and they said, yes, great. Yeah, let's do it. Because the prefecture wants these regional towns to utilize the assets that aren't being used, obviously. So, you know, I had 2 people from the prefecture come, and then 1 person from the town hall came. They showed us around the school, and I thought it was going great. And then I got an email from the town hall the following week saying, sorry, for these reasons we can't. And the reasons are usually like, oh, it doesn't comply with the fire safety laws. I was like, oh, if it just means buying a few fire extinguishers, I was like, I don't mind you know, paying for it myself. They're like, no, this is a government facility. We can't have a private company buying equipment for this facility. And then the other one was, which I come across a lot, is they used, to build these facilities, to build the schools. A lot of the times they use central government subsidy, and it comes with a list of things you can and can't do when you use government subsidy, and you've got like a 10-year you know, like a 10-year term that you can't use it for anything else. And it's usually like you can only use it for educational purposes, you can only use it for this, and you can use it for that. So because they've got that written down, these rural town office people cannot think outside the box and say, well, this person is coming to us and saying they want to use the government facility. You know, I'm pretty sure if they wrote to the central government, they would say okay, but they don't want to do that because the rules say this. So they're not very flexible, which is, you know, something that I really struggle with, because that's not how I was taught to, you know, work in investment bank, even in a Japanese investment, you have to be flexible and adaptable. Otherwise, you're never going to win any contracts or win any new clients. You're not going to get commission. You're not going to be able to, sell any stocks if you have too many rules and regulation. I think a lot of maybe Japanese companies, employees probably struggle with the same thing, but I've never really worked for a Japanese company. I've always worked for Gaishike, so I guess I've been lucky in that way. But having moved here and having had to deal with these people with these mindsets has been a struggle, but at the same time great learning experience. My policy, I like to just, if it doesn't work, I'll find another way, or I'll just go above them. If that doesn't work, I'll go above them. If that doesn't work, I'll go above them. And if it doesn't work, I'll just go to the central government in Tokyo.
Right.
Yeah.
Just find a way. I love that. Yeah, find a way. Because like failure is only when you give up, right?
Yeah.
Keep on going. One thing that occurred to me, and listeners may be interested in this as well, is because you have that kind of the bicultural background. So your mother's Japanese, your father's British. But what you're talking about here, this let's be flexible, that's like not your typical Japanese approach. So what how do you think about that in terms of your mother's influence on you and your father's influence on you in the different cultures?
My mother's definitely not flexible. She gets stressed out even listening to what I'm trying to do, so I don't tell her anything anymore. She just pushes back. She thinks I'm crazy. I think my nature came from having been raised in the UK and also being married to a American,
right,
who's been in war. So he's a very extreme masculine man who, who's been a medic, combat medic, who's been this and that. So I think he has a lot of influence on me as well.
Right.
And also having been working in the stock market for 15 years, you kind of adapt that. Even if that's not your nature, you kind of become that aggressive person that don't give up.
Okay.
So it is difficult trying to do stuff here, and I'm lucky that I'm doing it for my own company. If I'm not an entrepreneur, and if I didn't have my own company, if I didn't have my own land, it would have been very difficult. I see, people, Japanese people, non-Japanese people, move into the countryside, and if they don't have that connection to that land, they find it, very difficult to get along with the locals. I think the advantage that I have is, our family have lived here for over 400 years. Everybody knows my family. So I can, sometimes if I, don't like something, I'll just play the Gaijin card, and sometimes I'll play I'm a local card. So I think I've been very lucky in that way.
Oh, very handy.
Yeah.
So, thinking of a lot of our listeners, quite a lot of our listeners are in the corporate world, and you've come from that corporate background.
Yeah.
And if you're thinking of them, especially in terms of that getting things done and taking a more flexible approach, what advice would you give to them?
Japanese company. It's difficult. I know how hard it is to be in a Japanese environment with a Japanese boss, because people are not flexible and they like to have everything written down in very, very minor detail, which I just can't stand. But if that's what you have to do, you have to play their game. And data always helps. When I was trying to argue the gender equality thing at my previous investment bank, even though they were not Japanese, it was difficult to get my point across to a group of men. And then I was taught by a very kind Japanese lady who was one of my clients, worked for a big Japanese company. She was doing something similar. I think she was head of IR at the time. And she showed me her presentation and said, this is how you get their attention. People think, I don't know if this is, I guess this is more a male-female thing, not Gaijin Japanese thing, but people look at women and think you're complaining. You need to have everything written down in data points with graphs and explain it in a very logical way, and they'll understand. And I think that's what Japanese people are like too, regardless of gender. I think if you have a very logically logical explanation in data points, it's hard to say no when you've got that fact in front of you.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so making sure that they've got the facts and got the details, and I mean, this is something that I often say, is that thinking about who your audience is and what it is that's going to appeal to them. So if they're the sort of person that wants the facts and wants the details, that's what you're going to give them to move forward with what it is you want to do.
Yes, definitely. I think I've wrote down some notes and I think I wrote that too. Choose my battles was one of the things I wrote.
Oh, okay. So tell us a little bit more about that one.
So I'm quite hot-headed, and if I come across someone who's, you know, being very sexist or very racist, I used to get quite angry over it. But, you know, here it's an everyday occurrence because people they're just naive and they don't know any better. So, you know, my husband's like, you need to pick your battles, don't get angry with everything, you just understand your audience and where they're coming from and their background, and you know, you can't win everything. You know, I know that I'm not going to be able to change people's mindsets that easily, so I just play along and compromise. You know, I think everything is like a marriage. So when you're working with a business partner, when you have a boss, or when you have, you know, a friend, you have to compromise. You have to both of you have to meet in the middle. And if the other person doesn't want to meet in the middle, which is usually the case over here, I will try and go a little bit further, because I know at the end of the day what I want, and to achieve what I want, if it just means I need to just cross that line a little bit more and be on their side, then that's how it's going to get done.
Yeah, definitely. Pick your battles, because otherwise you can waste so much energy arguing for things that are just not going to, it's not going to change. So, yeah, excellent. Let's go into some quick questions. So the spontaneous questions, and then I'll come back again at the end and you and let us know what else, because I know you wrote some notes, and if there's other things that you want to share today, we can come to that. Some quick questions. So what is a favorite book or film for you?
A film that just popped into my head because I didn't prepare for this question. Rabbit Proof Fence, I think it was called. It was an Australian movie. Have you seen it?
No.
Australian movie, and it's based on a true story about, I think it was 3 sisters. I can't remember. Australia had a law where, you know, if you had a white parent and an Aboriginal parent, the child would get taken away and put in an orphanage. And I think that law was only abolished like 1979. I can't remember the fact, but it was quite recent. And that really shocked me because I'm mixed race too. And I thought, God, you know, if that happened here, I'll be taken away from my parents and then put in an orphanage. And these kids, it's a movie about these kids, and it's a real story. I think they show the real sisters right at the end. And they kept escaping from the orphanage to go back to their mother. And they had to walk across Australia with bare feet. And they kept going back, and they were following the rabbit-proof fence all the way back to their mother. And it's such a sad story, but, you know, it's just, I love reading or seeing movies or reading books about history of different countries, especially when it comes to race relations. The other thing I'm really intrigued about is the US, because my husband's half African-American and half Italian. And, you know, just I saw a movie about Mandela last night, and that's not the US, that's you know, black-white race relations in South Africa. But I'm just so intrigued by, you know, how recent it was where diversity wasn't accepted. But look at us now, you know, there's diversity everywhere, and lots of people are mixed race, people living in different countries, you know. So I'm intrigued about race, I guess, history. Yeah.
What about so I'm thinking of my original question was going to be, in your home, what's your favorite place to be in your home? But I'm like imagining, how big is your home?
It's tiny. It's tiny.
Is it?
Anywhere that's away from my kids is my favorite place. That sounds like a horrible mom, but I have 3 young kids. They're at school now, but they're 9, 6 and 3. And when they're home together, they're so loud. And I need to get away sometimes. So anywhere that's quiet away from my kids is my favorite place.
Okay, so this is going to be one then, because we have a lot of mothers, a lot of working mothers listen as well. And one question I often get asked about is morning routines. So, and especially having some time for yourself as a mother. What is your morning routine?
So since moving here, Tokyo, if you live in Tokyo, you're lucky because everything is set up so that working mothers can, have a easier life. Even though people complain about it, you don't realize you've got a good life until you move out to the countryside. My oldest son refuses to eat kyushoku because he doesn't like Japanese foods, especially countryside Japanese food. He liked it in Tokyo, but he doesn't like it here anymore. So I have to make him lunch every morning. Well, my husband and I take it in turns. Whoever wakes up first will make him lunch, which is usually just a sandwich. But we make the bread every day. There's no supermarkets around, so we have to make things like that from scratch. But we just put the ingredients in the bread maker the night before, turn it on, and then it just makes it. So I don't really do much. So he has a sandwich. Whoever wakes up first will make the kids sandwich and breakfast, which seems to be usually me these days. So the person that's not making breakfast will get the kids dressed, get them ready for school, teeth brushed. So my husband tends to do that. And then he will take the kids to school. And while their kids are gone, I will get ready for the day. And because I'm working from home, it's usually like just tidy the stuff that's on the dining table and then I'll sit down and start work. And then my husband will come home and then wash the dishes for me while I'm working.
So what about time for relaxing for you? When does that happen?
Good question. When you work from home, it's quite difficult. Relaxed time is when I'm working out. So I usually work out for an hour or two every day. So that would be my relaxed time. And also after the kids go to bed. So after the kids go to bed, it's, they'll be in bed by 8, but they don't go to sleep till 9. And then we have to tidy up. So we take it in turns. Actually, I'm not gonna lie, he does the dishes. And then I just kind of either sit in front of the TV and watch Amazon Prime because we don't get Japanese TV here. And even if we did, I probably wouldn't watch it. Or I'm just on my phone.
What's a favorite a TV series or something that you like to watch?
Oh, lots. There's a lot of BBC stuff on there on Amazon Prime. So I've been watching a lot of British stuff. I don't know really. Anything that's on Amazon Prime that's English related, British related. I guess I'm missing England, especially because I'm here and I don't have anyone around me that is from England. So yeah.
When did you last go back?
2019. I took my youngest daughter with me for a week. Yeah.
And okay, so you talked about the 4 nationalities. So and you talking about bread. So the food topic. What's of all those nationalities, what's your favorite food?
We eat a lot of pasta because my husband's dad is from Naples, and I know they eat a lot of pizza there, but kids like pizza. Carlo and I don't tend to eat a huge quantity of carbs because we work out and we try to keep our carb intake to a minimum. So but I do make a lot of pasta. He likes to make a lot of chili. We have an oven, so we use the oven nearly every day. So usually we get through a lot of meat, so I have to buy everything frozen. We'll get through like 2 kilos of chicken breast per meal. We eat a lot of meat. So everything just goes in the oven, and I'll put the potatoes in the oven, and then whatever veg in the fridge I'll just prepare on the side.
Is that a gas oven or an electric oven?
Electric. It's a German electric.
Okay. I was gonna be so envious. Like I envy gas, like big. Like
it's a big oven. It's a big oven that goes in the wall. I bought I had the same one in Tokyo, and then when we renovated this house ourselves last year, I went to IKEA and I got the IKEA kitchen. And then IKEA kitchens have a 60 centimeter by 60 centimeter slot where you can slot in your war oven. So I bought the war oven secondhand from Mercury. Mercari.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it cost me 200,000 yen, but it would have been more expensive if I bought it full price. So, you know, you just slot it in and you plug it in and that's it. It's great. I can't live without it.
Brilliant. Oh, yeah. I have oven envy. I've got the little tiny.
I couldn't do it.
Yeah. What is something that you are really proud of?
I'm really proud. I don't know really. I don't know if I'm proud of anything. Being able to stand on my 2 feet. I think in my 20s, you're a girl, especially if you have a Japanese mother, you're brought up to believe that you need to find a husband and you need to have that happy family life, and you're not really taught to be career focused. But now I think I've managed to escape that, and am now a independent woman supporting a family of 5. My husband hasn't worked for 6 years now, so I guess I'm proud of being able to manage a household that's not conventional, and not be in that mold. I'm proud of, I guess, being an example, a good example to my kids, hopefully.
That is brilliant. Wow. 5, that's, love
that.
Yeah,
3 kids, myself and my husband.
Okay, so as we're wrapping up towards the end of the show, what else would you like to share with our Sasuga podcast listeners and those watching the video version?
If you ever have the chance to come to Otoyo, Kochi, it is far from Tokyo, so I won't hold it against you if you don't. But there's a great rafting community here. And it is difficult to if you Google it, it's difficult to find things to do. But if you contact me, I'll give you all the list of things you can do and places to stay. And it's an absolutely beautiful place. You will be able to escape the city life. You hear birds, you hear insects, you step out at night and there's frogs. You can hear the big, loud frog sounds. And it's a really nice, beautiful, chill town.
Wow. Okay. Well, it's on my list.
Yeah.
Definitely. I love it. Okay. So where can people contact you when they want to know more?
My website will be up and running within the next week, so you can contact me through that. It's going to be vp-advisors.co.uk. co.jp, sorry, co.jp. Or I have an Instagram account, Violet Pacileo. I also have a LinkedIn account, Violet Pacileo. So yeah, you can message me through there.
Great. So we'll link to those in the show notes, and I do recommend, this is great. I'm sure people are thinking, yes, I'm going to travel, I'm going to get out of Tokyo. I mean, I know we have people not just in Tokyo, there are others around the world. In fact, we have listeners. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Violet, today. It's been great just hearing about, it's like a different world, and I really appreciate that you've spent some time with us today and shared like really new perspectives. I think it's going to give listeners just something different to think about, and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes of this and what happens with your whole the facility and the whole town as well. Sounds great.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.